Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the You season finale. A great season finale. A lot of interesting, fascinating twists and turns took place in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, we're picking up with Joe coming home. Obviously, obviously he committed a murder. He killed Ryan, but it's like, oh, I did it all for Marianne, so it's all fine. It's all good. He's hiding the evidence as Love shows up, and Love's going on about, like, oh, what we're going to do about the Conrads and stuff like that. But I'm like, oh, she's not talking about the Theo thing, even though Theo has, like, evidence. Well, it kind of does. It's all moot points now, considering the fact is that, all moot points now that Theo's dead. So I'm like, But he sees the blood on her shirt, and he notices, like, right, this couldn't just be about the Conrads. Like, the fact is, it's like the way she's avoiding looking at me, and it's like, oh, it's like, what's that about? She's like, right, that was Theo, so he had to, and she was actually heartbroken about it, because she did actually legitimately like Theo, so that's why it hurt so much, because it was almost like killing her own brother, I think, to an extent, like, hurting Theo like that. So Joe was like, right, we could use this as an opportunity, like, oh, like, obviously, it's just kind of like, oh, just love just diving deeper, like, right, like, we'll just have to deal with the Conrads, but it's like, oh my god, like, it's all working out, it's all coming out roses and everything, which is such a shame, because at the same time, you got, like, Matthew calling, you got him calling, you have him calling Theo, and it's just kind of like, oh, he's like, right, just let me know you're okay. Like, he was looking through pictures of Natalie, he had to let everything go, and just, he was like, right, I shouldn't have kicked you out like I did, Theo, and you're just like, oh, it sucks, Theo's gone, and obviously, Sherry and Carrie had to deal with the fact is like, right, it's been hours, he's most likely gone. Carrie keeps trying to look for a weak spot, which we know that there are keys in there. They haven't found it yet. But, like, she's just so caught up in everything, not believing Carrie about, like, oh, like, there being a weak spot. Obviously, them arguing back and forth. I think that happens later about the weak spot, but I do love that Joe's like, oh, like, Love was right. They'll probably will just, like, argue themselves to death. But he's getting ready to dispose of Theo, and even he's looking like, oh, poor Theo, poor kid. Because he had heard about Theo. He was like, yeah, it's kind of a shame you fell in love with the wrong woman, much like I did. But then, like, Theo turns out to be alive, and he's like, wow, Love can't even kill him properly. And honestly, it actually broke my heart to see Theo like that. He's like, oh, why did she do this to me? I loved her. And he's like, no, this isn't your fault at all, Theo. And he's like, are you going to kill me? I'm like, what are you going to do? Please don't. I was like, honestly, I was actually heartbroken. I was like, please don't kill that kid, Joe. Please don't. And it's like, right. Like, he wants to do the right thing. Well, before all that, he got good news from Marion of, like, it's like, oh, it looks like Ryan got mugged. And it's like, oh. Luckily, there's a lot of muggings in the area at the time, so I guess, I don't know, Joe knew that ahead of time, why he was immediately like, oh, I can make this look like a muggy, or it just happened to work out like that. But obviously, Marianne has to admit, like, oh, it sucks and everything happened. It's like, right, like Joe's like, I'm not saying we send flowers to the mugger, but life has gotten easier for you. Even the fact is, hey, me and Love, we're getting separated, so, and it's like, oh, cool. And also, like, but she admits, like, right, she's glad that Ryan's dead, and so it's like, yeah, like, this is the opportunity to kind of start over, and she wants Joe to come with her, and Joe's, like, so excited about it. He's like, yes! Just gotta deal with the loose ends. Theo ended up being a loose end, but it's not a loose end he's gonna kill. He actually takes Theo, he dumps him off, and, like, dumps him off somewhere, but it's like, right, like, at least he'll get the treatment. I'm like, honestly, I'm glad that worked out like that. I was like, yeah, granted, that kid has all the evidence necessary, like, to take everyone down, so it's not great, but at the same time, I forgot how it all got figured out. Was like, Love, found out about Ryan getting murdered because she's at the bakery and she hears about Ryan's murder, and it's like, oh yeah, like, everyone, and then she thinks about Ryan, and then Marion, and realizes, like, oh, this is what Joe does. He got obsessed and he got rid of her husband. It's like, oh, like, yeah, Joe, he's a gem locking up for me and stuff like that, and she pieces it together, and Kiki's like, oh, like, could you get some stuff for me? And just Love snaps at her. It's like, nothing you guys do will ever fill the void. And she's like, right, I'm just PMSing, because she had suggested, crazily enough, to Joe, like, why don't we have a baby? And she was even saying, like, oh, let's name the baby. It was like, I think she was like Julie or Juliet, which I'm like, oh, ironic, considering the woman he's trying to leave you with, Marion, has a daughter named Juliet. So I was like, oh, that's kind of ironic. But she was trying to pick out names, and at work and everything, she actually goes to after figuring it all out, she goes to talk to Sherry, and she's like, right, you're right. Joe was cheating on me. It's like, oh, it's like, you know what you should do? You should go fucking kill him. And I'm like, whoa. And then Love's just listening to Cher because she's like, he's the one that's cheated on you. And then, like, you know, you can kind of let me go. And Carrie's like, us go. She's like, whatever. Just, you know, kill Joe. Like, he's the one that betrayed your trust. And I love that, like, in that moment, Love's like, Sherry, wow, you are a fucking monster. Which is like, coming from Love, that is the biggest, what? Because it's like, almost like, I'm not going to kill my husband. Yes, he's made mistakes. He's did this and that, but I'm not going to kill him. You're a monster for suggesting that. Like, which so, like, the fact is, you get so caught up in like, oh, Joe can't recognize how messed up he is. Love is in the same way. Like, no, everything I'm doing is out of love. So she ended up picking up Henry. Obviously, Joe's worried. He's like, no, there's no way she can know. And then the way she's like, no, let's have dinner. And he's like, shit, she knows. You know, because he's like, oh, let me just go check on Henry. She's like, no, because he wanted to get Henry and bounce, but it's like, no, Love wanted to have dinner. And now it's the whole thing of like, okay, he's nervous. I was like, what's she going to do? And he just, you know, the back and forth, because she's like, yeah, I'm pretty. I have great sex. I'm a great mother. Yet you felt the need to cheat on me. It's like, right, that guy got murdered. What's the name? Ryan Goodwin. I was like, why does that name sound familiar? Oh, he's your boss's ex. And it's like, right. So it's like, do you love her? And it's like, huh. And Joe just kind of lays it all out. It's like, right, I'm just asking. He's like, I just didn't want you to, like, everything I have done, like, I have kind of going along with everything. I did love you the first time I saw you, you know, because she was like, oh, did you ever love me? But then it's like, right, like, brings up the James situation. And she's like, my mom is a malicious asshole. But it's like, no, it's like, all right, she's up front, like, right. So I did kill James. But not because I intentionally did it. It's just like, you know, I took care of him. And is it so wrong that when you take care of someone, you expect them to kind of want to stay with you? But he wanted a divorce after, even though she was there for him. And lo and behold, like, she tried to give him a paralytic just so she could have enough time so they can talk. Interesting parallels to Joe and Beck, how he tried to, like, lock Beck up until she could realize, like, how, like, oh, how made for each other we are. It's actually interesting because I think one of my niece, it's weird to say, like, I know my niece because I literally saw her, like, a couple hours ago watching you, and I was like, oh, that's weird. I guess because she's looking for stuff to binge on Netflix, and I guess she just came across the show and decided to start watching it. I don't know. And so it just kind of was like, and it was like where it was, what she was episode-wise was when Beck was trying to get to Joe, but Joe was like, no, you know, you're a writer, you're the writer I fell in love with. So, like, I haven't watched season 1 since season 2 came out, because that was the last time I rewatched season 1 in preparation for season 2. So when season 2 came out was the last time I'd seen season 1, so I hadn't seen anything from it since it. I'm going on a whole tangent, but it made me immediately, that was a lot fresher in my mind because I saw my niece watching it, so that's why I can draw that parallel. But, yeah, she wanted just a little bit more time, but she's like, right, the problem is I just got the dosage wrong, but I didn't get it wrong this time, so she's paralyzing Joe. She's like, look what you're making me doing. Now I'm going to have to kill her just so that we can stay together. I got to save our fucking marriage. And I'm like, once again, I brought it up previous episodes. I was like, I kind of want this to work out. So I'm like, I kind of hope Love does, like, you know. So I actually kind of saw a minor spoiler. It's no one's fault. It's just something I was flipping. It's been a week at the time of me recording this. Actually, a little over a week because it's Saturday at the time of me recording this. I want to say, like, I recorded episode 9 and this today. It's Saturday, but so it's been over a week. So it's like, you know, it's in that spoiler territory, especially TV shows that usually kind of can be up in the next 24 hours. You know, that's always, like, it just ranges from person to person and just. But once again, it's literally no one's fault. It's just like, but it didn't give a direct spoiler, but it gave spoilers enough about, like, oh, why Love didn't, because someone was interviewing the actress Victoria who plays Love, asking, like, oh, why she didn't kill, spoilers. And they didn't say the name, they just had spoilers, but I kind of, having already watched episode 9, at that point I was, like, running through the Rolodex of who it could be, but regardless. But Joe's laying on the floor, paralyzed, gag around his mouth. And Love was going to leave for like 10 minutes, and because she had texted Marianne to come over. So you have your boy Matthew see her leave, and he comes over, and Joe can't say anything because he's paralyzed. And it's like, right, oh, Joe. And it's like, he was actually kind of concerned for Joe because it's like, oh, they were kind of friends for a little bit, or at least on good enough terms. But then it's like, oh, he's like, don't call the police. He's like, oh, it's because you have my son. It's like you know, it's like, right, you, like, even if you didn't kill Natalie, even if it was just her, you helped a part, you were a part of it, blah, blah, blah. So he's like, you should, like, suffer what Natalie went to, like, 1,000-fold. So it's like, do you have Theo? And he points to his, and it's like, right. Being a tech guy, he looks at it and is like, right, this hospital, is this where Theo is? He said, good. He better be okay. And I'm leaving you here to whatever it is that love does to you, because you deserve it. So he bounces. I was like, okay, I was curious how that was going to play out. Love later on comes back. It's like, oh, I'm putting Henry down, coming back. I was like, oh, perfect timing. Marion's here. And so she was going to kill Marion because she had a plan. It's like, right, come in, at least have the decency. And obviously Marion's like, I'm a good person. Joe told me that you guys were separated. She's like, well, he lied. First time I'm hearing about this. And obviously, Marion, like, love was going to hurt her, but then, like, Juliet showed up, and it's just like, in that moment, it's like, right, how could I, like, that's such a cute little girl. And they even, like, told, it's like, right, Joe, he's obsessed with you. He'll do anything for you. That's why he killed Ryan. She's like, what? No, Ryan was a mugging. It's like, yeah, sure, mugging. It's like, Joe, I know he would do that for you. He's obsessed with you. How I know? Because he was obsessed with me, willing to do anything. So it's like, and then she was like, you have to run. But then, like, you know, she was like, you have to run too. And she's like, I can't. It's not as simple for me. But, Marion is like, right, there's a voice in your head. Like, she talks about the fact is that she didn't listen to that voice in her head, that she buried it down so much, and she's telling Love to listen to that. At the same time, like, Joe's on the floor, like, paralyzed, being like, don't believe her lies. Like, wait, you're not going to believe this. Like, of course you're going to play along like you believe it, when in actuality you don't. But it's like, a lot of what Love was saying kind of made sense to Joe. And obviously, for Love, she was like, oh my god, I can't believe I was thinking about killing, you know, obviously I get why you fell in love with her. She's awesome, and she has such a cute little girl. But it's like, right, she had it planned out, like, I'm now I'm gonna have to kill you, Joe, because she, you know, I realize now, like, I did bury that voice in my head for so long. I'm thinking, like, I'm the problem. Like, no, when it comes to my marriage, my husband is the problem. And she proceeded to kill him, but he injects her because he had staged all this. Once again, that, like, oh, I've got everything planned ahead of time. Like, I already knew what you were growing in the garden. You thought I wouldn't get curious. He looked it up, and basically one of the counteractives to it, a cure for it, is adrenaline. Definitely got a handful of that. So when Love gave him an opportunity by walking away, he popped some before, like, he ate the food and got paralyzed. So, and now he made sure to get the dosage just right. He's like, I had to stop you, Love. And just, it's legitimately, I've said it time and time again, I'm actually heartbroken by this ending, because I cannot stress how much I brought it up in season 2. Like, I know it's how fucked up, but I like them being together. Same thing applies here. Despite all the very fucked up shit, I wanted things to work out. I wanted them to stay together. I was hoping we get like despite everything, it's like, well, we're here. We did what was best. It's like, there's no, like, going forward with this relationship on both ends. But, like, you know, it's like, he's like, I had to stop you. And then she says a line of, he's going to know what you are, essentially, Henry. It's like, you and me, we were perfect for each other, but bad for Henry. And in that moment, like, that's her dying words. I was like, oh man, I was like, that sucks. I legitimately, so I was hoping to be kind of a Candace thing of like, oh, you thought you killed her, but in actuality it wasn't. But it's like, no, it's like, I'm actually, like, legitimately, I'm kind of bummed. And like, your boy did it again. He set everything in motion. He made sure to take, like, he's like, right, like, he believed what she said of like, right, like, you know, he doesn't want to screw Henry up. So, set everything in motion. He gave Henry to Dante and his, significant other to raise, left a letter and everything. He set it up to make it so like, oh, yep, Love is taking the fall for everything. She's like, yeah, I killed the adulterer. I killed Gil, who got my child, killed and framed Gil, who had my child, who got my child sick, and then killed Ryan, who was going to expose us. And then I not locked up, Carrie and Sherry, which that's the crazy thing. Joe and Love's relationship is the way it is. The fucked up thing is that they ended up, their fucked up situation actually made Carrie and Sherry stronger. Because at that moment, it's just like, despite being at each other's throats, being locked in there, maybe if Joe and Love, like, that whole thing was kind of for them to take things slow and everything, and that was the whole point of it. It coming full circle, like, that's what it's supposed to be. Like, oh, let's use this to lock that, like, lock things up. Like let's take things slow. That's what it served that purpose for Gil. But granted, things kind of sped up when he killed himself. But then, like, Carrie and Sherry actually get better, because it's like, she's like, for him, he like tried to always be perfect for her, and she's like, "What? No, like because she's very particular about everything." But Carrie admits, like, yeah, he was like going through life like super fast, like drugs, all this and that, until he met her. He's like, "There's a woman that's organized." He's like, "Those glasses, I love those glasses," because she adjusted who she was because she thought she needed to become like they both changed themselves. It's like no, but like. They got back in touch with who they were at their cores, like aside from all of this, and obviously she's scared because he's bleeding out from the gunshot wound. And I love it. And it's just like they legitimately got back together. It's like where Joe and Love couldn't come back together. Sherry and Carrie, like, despite being locked up in, like, it's ironic how that works out. It's super fucked up that it worked out like that. This was effed up to say. If we were following Sherry and Carrie's relationship, you'd be like, oh, rooting for them to an extent. You know, like, once again, I wish that was Love and Joe, but sadly that's not the case. The moment like Sherry happens to look at the door, she sees there's a key. It's like, right, those freaks don't trust each other. There's keys in here somewhere. She tears the whole place apart. Ultimately, the key she found wasn't Joe's. It was Love's key that she ended up finding. Like the pair, because like Love's the one that hid hers inside of stuff. Like Joe hid his on like a part of a section of the cage. It's like, once again, it's like that all coming full circle. I love it. Once again, Joe setting the stage, cutting off his own toes, putting it in and make it seem like, oh, like she butchered him. So like he doesn't have to necessarily take the fall for it. He gets to just disappear again, and he gets to start over. And he made it seem, and she wrote this letter, like, and as Joe said it, like people almost kind of looked at her almost like a folk hero. Andrew and his significant other took over the bakery, but their biggest seller is like those shirts. Honestly, it seems like Theo and Matthew's relationship is so much better. We see them kind of connecting after everything that went down. So it's almost like a lot of people in that area, except for the people they murdered and kind of screwed up forever, actually made it out better. Like, obviously, like that whole cage thing, like Sherry and Carrie are like running, like they have a whole TED talk about it and everything, and they kind of got rid of Love's narrative of her being like the hero in this situation, and they made themselves to be like, oh, the brave survivors of the cage. It's like, man. And once again, your boy Joe just, because now it's like, oh, Love is going to be more famous even than Guinevere Beck. I'm like, it could have only ended one way, but it's still like, man. Once again, and he walks away from it because everyone thinks he's dead. It's like, man, losing stuff left and right in the process of this, losing your toes now, like, and obviously it's like, he knew that, like, Dante would, like, and his significant other would raise Henry up, right? And it's like, right, there is more to the letter, but he's like, that's between Henry and me. Because we do cut back to, after everything, like, the reason why I thought it was beautiful, like the constant parallels in it of everything, of like how Joe, when he was younger, was talking to his friend about, the reason why he didn't do anything. Because it's like, apparently Fiona is on like break or something. He's like, yeah, it's probably her boyfriend. He's like, I would have done something, but my mom hated me because of what I did. And he's like, I didn't want Fiona to look at me that way. But like, he was like, your mom, you don't know how your mom feels about you. And, I kept wondering that, but like, neither of us will ever really know, like, it's like, neither one of us will ever really know why our respective parents left us here. But he looks into his file and he was able to track down his mom, and he was happy until he saw that his mom has a new child. It's that effed up thing of like, right, you went off and started a new family. You left me behind. You never came back for me. And so he confronts her. It's like, do you hate me? She's like, no. And he's like, did I do something wrong? It's like, then why did you never come for me? And why do you have him? And for her, the reason why she gets that Joe, everything Joe ever does is he tries to be good, and she understands that. But for her, it's a thing of like, she needed a fresh start because she made too many mistakes, and Joe would have been a reminder of it. So that means Joe has a half brother out there, and his mom is probably still alive and out there too. But I wonder, is there going to be more on that front going forward? But at the end of the day, like Joe did say he would kind of come back. So like maybe the circumstances that he's in with his son is kind of reflective a little bit of the circumstances he was in with his mom. But Joe kind of got his fresh start in this case. So we see that he's in Paris. He can't find Marianne anywhere. And now he's like, so did you believe, like, were you worried? Do you think, like, were you worried about what happened to me? Because, like, everyone believes he's dead. And it's like, right now it paints it as, like, Love manipulated and controlled him into the circumstances that she's the one behind everything. But he's like, yeah, it's like, no, I found you, my love, and I'm not going to stop. Even though they're going around the entire world, I will find you. So that's... Like I said, I'm kind of heartbroken because I was hoping things would work out with Love. Because obviously the way Love had things set up, it's also made it so that none of the Quinn family could ever, like, try and get, block any attempt for them to, like, adopt Henry. Because he needed to be as far away from the Quinn family, too, because they were just as fucked up. Especially Dottie. But she had to eventually give up and, you know, despite, like, struggling, but it's like Dante ends up, like, getting, like, full, like, custody and everything. He did tell Henry, like, oh, I will be back someday. So Henry will probably be a little bit older, probably a lot more like his dad. But it's still that complicated thing of, like, you stopped his mom, sure, but you're also responsible for killing his mom. And the narrative is that his mom's a psychopath that killed his dad. So once again, just like he had to stop that guy from hurting his mom, it's like I had to stop Love from doing all that she was doing. So like I said, I'm still heartbroken because I was hoping, like, I said this at the beginning. I said it in my thoughts and theories. I wanted those kids to make it, but sadly not. So here we are. Joe is in Paris, believed to be like the country of love, or rather the city of love. So ironic to say that now, you know, considering he was just in love with Love, and it's just sad things kind of ended up that way. So it's gonna be interesting, and especially going forward, it's like it's all going to be about finding Marion and being, well, will it? I don't know. Is he going to find a new obsession in between then, or it's like, is Marion his happily ever after? Will he be able to let go of all the bad stuff? It's like, you know, he wanted, like, getting rid of Theo to be the last bad thing he did, but killing Love was actually the last bad thing he did. So maybe without her anymore, he won't have to worry about it. Granted, he was haunted by Beck last season, so it'd be neat if it'd just be a stark reminder that she's not around anymore, whether or not you know, he gets, like, visions of Love, like, you know, as he's tracking down Marion, that, like, she's kind of stuck inside his head for a little bit. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. The show has been renewed for a 4th season. I saw, like, there was a date announcement video, like, sometime, like, earlier this week. I was like, wow, that was, I guess it must have done super well, like, early days and numbers for Netflix, because they announced that pretty, you don't rarely get to see Netflix announce a new season this fast. It usually takes a couple months, if even that. Sometimes they'll make the decision if something's not performing enough that they'll cancel in, like, within a month, but, like, it took them a couple days to be like, oh yeah, on I didn't watch it, but I got like, I did see, like, on YouTube, there's a season 4 announcement for You, and it's there at the end being like, yeah, You, it's official, another season's coming. So it's definitely going to be interesting because based on what we've been seeing at the, like, you know, it's all based on Hidden Bodies. So because season 2 pulls from Hidden Bodies as well, so like season 2 and 3 are probably like all based from, like, loosely based, because I know that there are some differences. All the differences I'm not aware of, but I know that they're all kind of pulling from Hidden Bodies, the book. And I talked about this recently. There is a 3rd book that came out this year called You Love Me. So I'm definitely interested to kind of look into. I'm not the biggest reader, but I am curious to find out some of the major differences between, like, because, like, it's more like season 1 was kind of loosely based on You. These 2 seasons, I think, are just loosely based on Hidden Bodies. I'm also curious, is there ever going to be anything with the Ellie thing, too? Because obviously she gets referenced. He was, like, sending her money, but now that he's dead, that's probably not going to be, I don't know. I mean, you could make the argument, like, things worked out, because it's like, well, not really, because, I mean, Candace wanted Joe exposed and everything, but Love, who's responsible for Natalie's death, obviously Joe and her played a role in the Gil situation, but Joe killed Ryan, but he's kind of a terrible person. That was also a point Love was trying to make too, like, you know, why, like, oh, you know, we're killing people who aren't really great people, but suddenly it's like, oh, you have an issue with, you know, she's like, oh, at first I thought you were sensitive about it. It's like, no, you're willing to kill for someone else that's not me. So it's like, oh, killing for me is the issue, but oh, when it comes on someone else, you're willing to kill. So, like I said, I'm fascinated to see, like, in the season 4 where Joe is going to be. Like, well, he always tries to be good, so he is trying to be good now. So maybe going forward, he'll still be doing a little bit of him, because he can't escape who he is in his own way. And, you know, once again, now we've introduced, like, oh, he's got a half brother. Maybe his mom's still alive and, like, what's going down on that front. But like I said, also, like, you know, I'm so bugged about that love situation. I don't know, because love was so messed up, I thought her and Joe would make it. So it was a thing of, like, I felt better about it than, obviously, the Beck situation, because I was like, oh, it's sad that things played out that way. But kind of what I wanted, like, oh, maybe Beck could really fall for Joe. Oh, nope. But love ultimately did, because she turned out to be kind of crazy like him in her own way, but even too crazy for even Joe to comprehend and deal with. But I wish they could have worked it out. I was rooting for him. I wish it had worked out, but I mean, it is what it is. So, like I said, Joe in Paris, which is funny because there's a Netflix show called Emily in Paris. So it's like now Joe's in Paris. So whether he stays in Paris, we'll have to wait and see, because there is a whole thing about Marianne does speak French and stuff, so this would be the perfect place to disappear. Not just a different city, but like different whole other country. So, and that's what Joe went from New York to LA to now here, and now it's like, oh, he just might as well leave the States behind and go to another country. But that's mainly, but I'm curious, like, will it be like a world traveling to find Marianne? I'm sure he's going to find another book situation. Is there any other obsession like that's going to pop up of like, oh, he finds himself drawn to someone else? It's like, no, Marianne's my one and only, so I've got to find her. And even if he does, will it work out? Like, will she accept him? Will she reject him? Because the whole point was, like, love saw him for who he was, and he kind of saw love for who she was, but he kind of rejected her. And they were both just people who were perfect for each other because they saw the darkness in each other and they accepted each other. It's just, you know, it just sadly didn't work out. I know it's super fucked up how I'm lamenting on that. Like, that's my big takeaway, not from all the terrible shit that they did, but it's just like, man, I wish he didn't kill love. I wish they could have made it work in the end. You know, the fact is, I'm lamenting on that. What does that say about me? You know, so God. But I'm excited to see where season 4 ends up taking us for this. I haven't looked into it other than knowing there is going to be a season 4. I haven't read anything about, maybe there's some stuff out there about like, oh, what they have planned for season 4. I don't want to know. I'll just find out the moment everything, gets revealed whenever they drop a trailer for, You season 4. So we'll have to wait till then. But that's really all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.